This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Mike Irwin from the Pig Trail Nation to put a little cap on Saturday's ball game, whichever way you want to look at it. A happy cap, a sad cap, and it's definitely a sad one for 3 straight losses. Mike, how you doing? Your head still ringing at all from the cowbells? How'd you deal with that on Saturday?
Well, again, these days I'm an in-studio analyst, so I wasn't there, so I didn't have to deal with the cowbells, but I do know that a lot of fans were saying, that were watching on television, saying, well, I think they screwed that cowbell thing up. They didn't stop soon enough. I wasn't there, so I don't know, but having been there many times, I can tell you their fans are pretty disciplined. They like the cowbells. And they were warned when this changed, when they were allowed to do it years ago. They were told by the SEC office, if you don't stop ringing those things as the team lines up to get ready to do the next snap, we're going to take it away from you. And my experience is the noise level just drops off immediately. It's loud between plays, but it drops off.
It drops off for sure. There's still a few, random bells that are ringing, but I don't think they do anything about that. And that has nothing to do with Arkansas losing anyway. I think you knew that it was going to be a tough road to hoe without KJ Jefferson, without Miles Slusher there, and the difficulties Arkansas has already had defensively. And I wonder what your takeaway is on the defensive side for the Razorbacks. It kept the 3 down linemen the entire game, and I just don't know. Like, if you would have brought anybody up, go with 4 down linemen or try to rush Sanders much, that exposes what is the biggest weakness for this team. And I just go in now, and the more I think about it, I wonder if Arkansas really had much of a shot to slow Mississippi State down either way.
Yeah, that's my take. I mean, Barry Edelman's getting ripped, for that 3-man pass rush and for, quote, not adjusting. That's what you keep reading all the time on social media. Didn't adjust. I felt like he was between a rock and a hard place before the game ever started. And as Sam Pittman said, which death do you choose, slow death or quick death? Because if you do all that blitzing stuff, if you bring people up on the corners and you really go after Will Rogers in a pass rush, he's just going to throw it over you. I do think that Barry Odom had a plan. It was to drop people back in coverage and have that 3-man front. But he was going to do some experimenting. They were going to move Drew Sanders over to the edge some and let him rush, do something with some of their nickelback guys. I mean, when you're dropping that many guys back, basically you got 3 guys. That means you got 8 guys off the ball, off the line of scrimmage. And I think he had some plans to try and mix it up, but then he immediately got 2 more defensive backs hurt early in that game, and he just felt like, I just got to play this thing straight up. And I think if they had a better offensive effort, if they didn't get into that big hole early, maybe they would have had a chance, but they were just in a hole before they ever figured out that Malik Hornsby should be the quarterback, and it was all over at that point. You can't catch up. And you're going up against the best passing offense you've faced all year, probably the best passing quarterback, maybe the best one they'll see this season. He's good. He's really good. So I don't know that if Barry Odom had done what the fans are suggesting, I think they would have just gotten some big chunk plays on Arkansas. So either way, you lose.
Yeah, the scheme has to match the personnel. And when I look at the personnel right now, especially in the secondary for Arkansas, look, I still think the defensive line is a strength for this team. That might not have been the case on Saturday against Mississippi State. I still think you had a couple of good linebackers in Drew Sanders, who's terrific, and Bumper Poole, who we learned after the game that he's dealing with a hip injury. But you still have a secondary that is just beaten up. Guys that are switching positions. You had Hudson Clark playing boundary safety at times. And I wonder, do you think that this could change the direction of how the defense is playing moving forward, or was this just a one-time thing because of the strength of Mississippi State's passing offense and the way that they throw it?
Well, I think if you get Slusher back and you get a couple of these other guys that were hurt, if those turn out to be just small injuries and they're back this week, I don't know that he's going to go back to what he was doing before. I don't know that he'll go to a 4-man rush. I don't know that he'll blitz as much as he was. But I do think, you're facing another passing team, but it's an entirely different kind of team this week. They have kind of a conventional quarterback. He can run some, he can throw some, and it's just not the air raid. So I do think there'll be some changes. But the biggest difference to me is K.J. Jefferson back, and you know who your starter is from the first offensive series. They had a plan to throw it more in this game, and I just think they did, but it hurts a little bit when you don't have your starter in there to do it. So I'm always optimistic. I think if Jefferson's back and they're committed to throwing it a little more, I think they got a shot to win this game, and they really need to win it. Because if they can come back and break this losing streak and then have an open date week and get some people healed, I've looked at this schedule coming up, and the only team that really looks hugely problematic is Ole Miss. And even them, that's a home game. Things can happen between now and then. They might be able to win that game, but those other games could all go either way. I mean, you're talking about Auburn. Can you beat Auburn? I would think they could. Can you beat LSU? LSU's in a world of hurt right now. What about Liberty? Liberty's ranked, but really? I don't know. We'll see. So I think when you look at the schedule, you can see a path to do what they did last year, which is, win, maybe lose one more down the road, otherwise get back up in a good position, or it could go completely south on them. And don't forget, they could have more injuries. It could be that sort of year.
Yeah, it already has been that sort of half.
And it could get, sure. I guess what I'm saying is it could get worse. It could always get worse.
I'm always reminded that things can always get worse just when you think that they can't. But hopefully that's not the case. And you look at a team that was, for the first 4 games, started so fast. Even in the loss to A&M, I mean, they came out gangbusters, really, on both sides of the ball. That's the way that it was. Now, I mean, look at what happened in the first half against Alabama and say, look, that's Alabama, but that's also not a good enough answer. They could be Alabama. They could have had Bryce Young, but they only had him for a chunk of that first half, reel out 28 straight points. I don't care who the opponent is. You can't allow that to happen. And I think it was obvious from the opening kickoff on Saturday. It's not a matter that they weren't ready to play. It's just it was an undisciplined first drive. The opening kickoff goes out of bounds. I didn't realize, I'd forgotten, Bates had went to Mississippi State and decided to transfer out of there, so he was a little jacked up, I guess, on the opening kickoff. It's just, but then that leads to an offsides penalty and everything. It's just, these last 2 first quarters, you can't play like that against anybody and expect to win.
Well, it was really messed up. And, I mean, you can start with this decision to start Fortin, and Sam Pittman explained that. He said Fortin, from his explanation, Fortin is a practice player, the opposite of a gamer. He practices well, and he gets in a game, and he can't deliver. And then I guess Hornsby's the gamer because he apparently didn't look all that good in practice. I think they've decided, okay, we're going to use him, but maybe in run situations. And then it became pretty obvious very quickly that they needed to put him in. And then when he came in, he reels off that big run, which is the longest run by a quarterback at Arkansas since Matt Jones. And he had 2 of them. The second one he gets hurt in. So how much more bad luck can you have? Because now he goes to the bench. And so you got Fortin for another series before he finally comes back in again and sort of stabilizes things a little bit. And then he comes back and they score. They score 10 unanswered points. You're going into halftime with a little momentum, just like last week. And then what happens? You get A.J. Green muffing this kickoff in which it goes through his legs, and then he tries to touch it, and it goes back into the end zone. And if he'd just fallen on the ball, it comes out to the 25. And Sam Pittman said, look, you want to criticize our offensive coordinator or our special teams coordinator for that? We worked on that this week with him. He just panicked, and this happens in games. Fans may not understand it, but you get out there in the heat of battle, and it just goes away. And so that really was huge to me because it took all their momentum away that they had going into the third quarter, puts them in a hole, and then they have to punt and you give a short field to Mississippi State, and they come down and score again, and you've lost your momentum. It went bad every way it could go bad.
Well, and even to the point about the Arkansas defense and the way that things were aligned, or the play calling by Barry Odom, and you want to criticize it maybe, but I mean, you look at the idea that there were 2 or 3 dropped interceptions, including when they went right through I think it was Chavis's hands for a touchdown for Mississippi State. And, I mean, that was also partial. That was what they were waiting for. That's why you were playing 6 defensive backs, and that cloud coverage is waiting for Rodgers to make a mistake. He wasn't perfect. His stats look like he was perfect, but he wasn't perfect. He got away with some balls that could have been picked off.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You want to criticize Odom's strategy. Well, there were some times where it really worked, and you just didn't hold on to the ball. I've always said this. I'm not a coach, but they talk about you need to have tackling drills in practice. I think you need, with your secondary, you need pass-catching drills. I'd have them out there trying to catch all kinds of crazy passes that are thrown above them. You got to reach down. They got to go left with their arms, right. Put them in all kinds of weird positions and teach them that just knocking the ball away is not enough. You've got to, when you have a chance to get your hands on that ball, you've got to intercept it. And they didn't do it. And I think they scored 2 touchdowns off of passes that should have been intercepted in the end zone. That's a huge swing if you pick off both of those passes.
Well, and it's also another week where, and again, it's not your usual number one quarterback in there, So Malik is in there, but still, the issue without very much production from Matt Landers, and Hazelwood, I think, he had a nice game. He continues to block well. I think Jaden Hazelwood has been as good as advertised. The rest of the wide receiving core, I mean, there's reasons why you're seeing Bryce Stevens getting more opportunities. There's reasons why Ketron Jackson is on the field a lot more now. And I thought Matt Landers would be a go-to guy. And right now, they're barely even looking his way. Targeted 3 times on Saturday, didn't make any catches. I think it's 1 catch the last 2 weeks. That's one person that, I don't know, maybe by now that, it is what it is. But that's still, for me, feels like somebody that was supposed to be a big part of this Arkansas offense, still can moving forward, but we're still waiting hands on hips.
Well, we don't see what happens in practice. And maybe there's an issue there, because we know that coaches make these decisions that you can say that it's flawed sometimes, because there's a big difference between what some guys do in practice and what they do in a game. It's all they've got to go on. And if some of those receivers are not looking good, then you can see where others would be targeted. Or it could simply be that's the way that worked out on that play. Or maybe you don't see a guy and he's open, or maybe he's not getting open. There's just so many answers here on some of these things. But I think they're in a world of hurt, primarily because of all these injuries on the defensive side. And I would say to any fan that complains about this, I want to see your plan. I want to take you out there, put you up in that booth, and let you call your defense with these guys and produce a different result. It won't work. He's just got to me an almost impossible job right now.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, if the starting quarterback isn't working for a team, then the answer is always the second stringer, and you're going to win the rest of your games, right? And it's the same idea with, if you didn't call this alignment, the next alignment works too. And I could hear in Sam Pittman's post-game presser, he didn't want to, to put it on injuries. I don't think any coach really wants to say that, because in that case, I started the show, Mike, talking about, excuses and reasons sometimes are the exact same thing. It's just a matter of who's calling it, what that is. And I think for the coaching staff, I mean, they won't say it publicly unless they're asked about it. And even at that, they'll couch the answer. But it's a reason to the coaches. For a lot of fans, for a lot of people that are being critical, and look, I understand being disappointed, 3 straight losses, all the hype built into the season, and all of that. But I think for the coaches, it's more reasons. For the fans, it sounds more like an excuse.
Well, so many times what really gets labeled and put on a coach is a player failing to perform. I go back to this Alabama A&M game, and Jimbo, and I'm not a fan of Jimbo, but he's getting ripped left and right for that last play. I mean, that's a called thing. That quarterback drops back, takes 1 step back, is supposed to throw it to the guy on the right side into the end zone. He throws it a yard short of the end zone. There's no way to make that work. That's on him. I'm sure Jimbo didn't say, hey, I want you to take the ball and throw it out of bounds. That way we can win the game. But that's what really happened. And so he's getting blamed for this when the quarterback just flat screwed up. You know, the guy was covered, but at least if you throw it to him, he started off in the end zone. He had to cross the goal line and go back out onto the, to the 1 yard line to even try and catch the ball, and he couldn't catch it. It was incomplete because of the ridiculous pass that was thrown. But how you see what I'm saying? That gets put off on Jimbo. That's just not what happened.
That's true. That's true. Well, that's just the way things operate sometimes, I guess, Mike. BYU Saturday. What are your impressions of Brigham Young? They put up a good fight against Notre Dame on Saturday, but came up just a little bit short. Big passing offense, another really good quarterback in Jaron Hall. Good quarterbacks. I always get nervous about, against the Arkansas defense this year. So, what are your early thoughts on the trip out to Provo?
Well, I don't think they're as good as Mississippi State. You can stop them. They're one of these teams that's going to get you. You're rolling along, everything's okay, and all of a sudden they reel off a big play. That quarterback can take off and go 30 on you, or he can hit a big pass play. He doesn't do it consistently. So this is a game, again, where I think Arkansas has to generate points. I want to see if KJ's back in there. I want to see if they're really going downfield, throwing vertical passes, making use of those receivers that you're talking about. It could be a simple matter. They haven't been throwing to these guys very often. They're not even getting targeted. And you got to get in there and make sure, hey, we got to get these guys back involved in the offense. You're still going to run it. I have no issue with them having way more running plays than passes, but the passes need to not be those dink passes because that's not what KJ's strength is. Go downfield 18 yards, go downfield 20 yards, and occasionally air it out. And I think you can beat these guys, but you've got to generate offense. You can't just hang it all on the defense and hope you can win a 21-14 game or something like that. It's just not going to work.
Mike, appreciate you hopping on with us on these Mondays. Thank you for your time.
See you.
All right. Mike Irwin, Pig Trail Nation.
Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all sports wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. That's BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts.